Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Ung Studio, and today we're going to be making a custom jigsaw puzzle. Let's get started. In terms of how I came up with this project, I've always wanted to make a jigsaw puzzle of my own, one that had a photograph or art that I could engrave onto the surface as the primary art that brings it all together. For this puzzle, I wanted to make it as hard as possible, so the overall shape of it will be a perfect square and the art will be a mandala that consists of 8 lines of symmetry. So let's talk about tools and materials before we jump into the mandala sketch. In terms of the tools and materials I'll be using for this project, I'll be using my Glowforge laser cutter as the primary tool to engrave the mandala art that I come up with onto this 1/8" piece of maple plywood. And then using the Glowforge again, I'll be cutting all of the pieces out. To cut these puzzle pieces, I'll be using a generator that another Glowforge owner shared on the forums that he came up with. It's one of the things that I love about being a part of this Glowforge community, where members share some of their projects as well as the files and other things that will help other creators make something like it on their own. Now the last tool I'll be using is this blue painter's tape, which I'll use to hold all of the puzzle pieces together after they're cut in my laser cutter so that I can transfer all of the puzzle in one piece from the laser cutter to my table, take this blue painter's tape off without damaging the material, and then I can look at all of the pieces and make sure that they're organized. It'll also help me with photographing my product and to show you guys what it looks like when it's done without having to spend the time to put it together, because I don't know how long it would actually take me to finish this puzzle. I haven't done a puzzle in over 24 years, so hopefully this will help me speed along that process, and once I'm done, I'll break it down and then I'll take my time putting the puzzle together in the future. Moving into the mandala art for this project, I'm going to be using an app called Mandalas, which you've probably seen me use in previous videos of mine. And if you haven't seen those videos, you should make your way there after this one and check those ones out as well. Using the app to sketch the mandala for this project, I'll have 8 lines of symmetry along with a perfect square board, and also a lot of repetitive geometries and elements so that the entire puzzle will have a lot of different angles that look exactly the same. I'm hoping that this will make the jigsaw puzzle harder for people who are great at solving jigsaw puzzles, and also become something that they can then hang up on their wall because it's a beautiful piece of art. So now let's get into sketching the mandala, where I'll show you a time lapse of how it all came together and how it came out. So let's jump into using the generator to come up with the jigsaw puzzle pieces. In the jigsaw puzzle generator interface, you'll see that there are different settings at the top left corner of the screen. For this particular project, my tab size I left at 20%. I think that's a good tab size for all of the pieces. In terms of jitter, I didn't really know what that setting was going to change, so I didn't modify it. For tiles, I wanted this to be a perfect square, and I also wanted 400 pieces. So that came out to 20 by 20, which refers to the rows and the columns. That's the rows here center and the columns up and down. For the overall size of the puzzle, I went with 279.4 millimeters square, which equates to about 11 inches square. That's the maximum size of one direction of a material that could fit onto the laser cutter bed of my Glowforge. Now moving into the Glowforge interface, this is what it looks like when you bring together the mandala art that I sketched earlier along with the jigsaw puzzle that I generated. When you look at it and you zoom in, you can actually see the mandala art overlaid onto the jigsaw puzzle pieces. And the one thing that I really like about Glowforge's interface is that if I click on any of the art that I have in that screen, I can change the position and scale. And if I have two different things that I want to overlay and be the same exact size, I can click on them and change their position and scales together. Now that I have everything laid out in the Glowforge interface, the next step is to set up the Glowforge with the material, and I'm going to have two different steps in the Glowforge itself. The first is going to be engraving the mandala art onto the surface of that maple plywood that I have, and once it's engraved, I'm going to take my blue masking tape, lay it over the mandala art and the area to be cut with the jigsaw puzzle pieces, make sure that the tape is concealing all of it and taped on as tight as I could, and then I'm going to move into laser cutting the puzzle pieces themselves. The reason why I want to use the blue masking tape to cover the mandala art before I start laser cutting the puzzle pieces is because I want to protect the wood from the high heat and intensity of the laser itself when it's cutting through the wood. When it does that, sometimes it discolors the wood and it also leaves some residue on top. So by having a protective layer like this, it'll help me keep each piece as clean as possible. And when I'm done cutting the puzzle, I'll take the blue painter's tape again and create another layer on top of all of the pieces to help me transfer it from my laser cutter to this table here, where I'll remove all of the blue painter's tape, assemble the puzzle, and show you guys what it looks like. So let's jump into setting up the Glowforge and laser cutting this project. Alright guys, I just finished engraving the mandala onto the maple plywood, and then I laser cut the puzzle pieces onto it. Right now, as you can see, there's the blue painter's tape on the maple plywood, and that basically helped me hold all of these pieces together so that I can easily transfer it here to my table. And I also have this white piece of chipboard that I'm going to put the puzzle onto as I remove the blue painter's tape. It'll just help me keep the puzzle together so I can then bring it upstairs and photograph it in natural daylight. So I'm going to get started with the process and show you guys a time lapse. It takes a very long time to remove all of the adhesive tape from both sides of this piece of plywood. I just finished removing all of the protective covering from the custom jigsaw puzzle that I made. From the start of the project to the end of it, it took about 10 hours total, and that includes the time that it took me to sketch the mandala that went onto the surface of the project, all the way through to removing the last piece of protective film off of the puzzle piece itself. To break down how long it took to create this project, it took about 2 hours to draw the mandala and to create the jigsaw puzzle from the puzzle generator online so that it was satisfactory to me. After that, it took about 2.5 hours to engrave the mandala onto the surface of the maple plywood. This is because I spent about half an hour just doing some test runs in the bottom right corner of the sheet that I wasn't going to use. The test runs included the base settings that came with my Glowforge, as well as some custom settings that I tweaked and input on my own. I actually like the custom settings that I came up with, so that's the settings that I ended up going with for the engraving. And then I used Glowforge's actual settings for cutting the maple plywood, and that worked out perfectly. In between the engraving and the cutting part, it took about 15 to 30 minutes to get the blue painter's tape onto the puzzle so that it can hold it all together and protect it from marring on the surface from the laser burning through and cutting through the maple plywood itself. Something I wanted to mention about testing your settings before actually going in and engraving your material or cutting it is that it's really important to do it for every project, especially one like this where it took 2 hours just to engrave the plywood itself. If I didn't modify the settings, it might have taken 3 hours and it might have been a little too dark. You can actually see it in the test runs that I did in the plywood. Not only did I try it with text, I also tried it with a scaled down version of a specific part of the mandala, and I chose the center because that's where more of the lines were dense and closer together. Even though this project took twice as long as I expected, I'm happy with the outcome of the jigsaw puzzle itself. The mandala came out beautifully on it, and I think it really does achieve the level of difficulty that I was going for. This is because the puzzle generator actually created a puzzle where all of the pieces weren't the same, and the mandala that I drew has so many points of symmetry that it actually starts to hide some of the pieces and it distracts the person from putting it all together. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment below and let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, and follow me for more.